Welcome to this session today. My name is Sam Toland and I'm from the Dublin Food Co-op, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the first in the series of our community development program this year. This webinar is What If Couriers Owned Their Own Platform? And I have to be honest, it actually wasn't intended to be the first in the series. The first in our series is just about cooperatives generally, and I'll kind of share something in the chat about that soon. But basically, as the Dublin Food Co-op has tried to expand our delivery service over the last couple of months, we've really struggled to find what we consider to be an ethical solution to that problem for us. And that's what brought us to CoopCycle, who are one of the presenters here today. And we thought, kind of given the broader context in the city at the minute and the I suppose the challenges that couriers are facing, we thought that this conversation was particularly timely. And we decided to bump it up to the beginning of the program. So briefly, the running order, we've got Tiago, who's a courier based here in Dublin, and he's going to set the scene for us in terms of kind of what are the challenges facing couriers at the moment in Dublin. And then Adrien is from CoopCycle, and he's going to share the idea of courier co-ops and the platform CoopCycle that they provide to courier co-ops. And maybe he'll speak a little bit about kind of generally other supports that either they can provide or that other organizations can provide. And then with the rest of the time, we're going to have a Q&A. But you can start asking your questions in the chat right now, and then between myself and Kevin, who's here from Dublin Food Co-op, we'll kind of do a mix of in-person questions and then maybe answering some of the questions from the chat. So hopefully everybody's good with that. And we'll first hand over to Tiago to set the scene for us. Tiago, work away.
Good morning, guys. My name is Tiago. I'm a writer almost a year. I live in Ireland, have 11 years. First challenge that our couriers and writers find here is the weather, but that's not a surprise for anyone. But I think this last year that we found a lot of challenge, right? Everybody's in COVID situation, and all these companies, they are facing a big increase in their what they get, and we are, as writers, we didn't got any interest on that. Like actually the opposite, they increase the number of writers in the streets and decrease the amount they pay for the runs. They make a lot of changes without have any consultation with the writers. All that. Everything that we suffer as well, that we complain, usually they don't listen to us, and it's a very hard communication between the companies and the writers. It's like almost none. It's not an easy time as well for us, and we having a lot of trouble in the streets because of the violence based in the COVID situation, not of the companies then, but it was a very tricky time as well for we get people to see that we are being was a lot of effort from the writers and very listening as targets in this difficult situation. Now things are better, thanks God. Thanks our work of 5-6 weeks, we have now more safety in the streets, more guarding. But yeah, it's not easy, you be responsible for yourself, and the company is just making a lot of profit and not caring for us.
Thanks, Tiago. Thanks for setting the scene there. And I suppose we can maybe hand over to Adrien now to talk about CoopCycle and how they can potentially address some of those problems.
Good morning, everybody. And first of all, thank you, Sam and Dublin Food Co-op to host this talk. It's really nice for us to talk to Irish people today, because we haven't set a foot in Ireland yet, and we hope to do so in a very short time, as CoopCycle is now present in around 10 countries, mostly in Europe, but also in Canada and Australia since the beginning of the year. Yeah, we have this. I come from Brittany in France, so I have the same issue with the weather, Tiago. So I see what you mean. Just like a short brief about how CoopCycle was born. It was born in 2016 after the first strikes of couriers working for the gig economy platforms in Paris, there was a social movement at the time where couriers met with political activists, let's say, one of them being a developer who still is our lead developer, Max. So the idea was because at the time we had a company called Take It Easy in France, and they left from one day to the other, leaving the restaurants with no money, like the money they were owed, and the couriers with no money, the money they were owed as well. So basically what Max tried to do as a developer who likes developing and code and things like that, he said, I might as well clone this type of app in order to put it in the hands of couriers. And because one of the problems today is the technology. How do you get the technology without spending so much money? And being a courier, usually you don't earn enough on the platform so that you can afford yourself paying for the technology. So the idea was to build a technology that could be shared and the cost of which could be shared between riders across France, but soon it became across Europe and now it's across the world, so that we can address couriers and tell them, right, you don't have to pay anything up front. Here's the technology, do what you can, and trying to develop something to emancipate from the platform, the gig economy platforms. So basically, this is how CoopCycle was born, and it developed really well in France at the beginning, but soon in Belgium and Spain. And now we have more and more people contacting us, mostly from the UK and Spain at the moment. What's interesting is at first people, they wanted to get out of the food delivery system. And when Max created the platform, the first response to the couriers who joined us was, you might as well just develop a dispatch logistics software, because we don't want that part of the food delivery. We're sick of it. And because he had already developed it quite well, he didn't ditch it, obviously. But that's where in CoopCycle was born, like the dispatching end of the software. And since then, there were like two types of co-ops in CoopCycle. Co-ops who were doing food tech, so like delivering of food delivery, meal deliveries, and the ones who do more like last mile cargo bike style deliveries. And there was kind of not a rivalry, but really two types of co-ops within CoopCycle. Last year made everything kind of different, because the pandemic made food delivery very interesting for a lot of people, and people realized how much they needed to rely on couriers in order to get their restaurants still in economic health, and people at home being treated with a nice meal instead of doing everything on their own every night. So a lot of CoopCycle's co-ops shifted from doing last mile, because there was no B2B business anymore. There was nothing to carry with a cargo bike. So a lot of the business went from B2B to B2C, and now the platform has also shifted from a platform that was doing only restaurants to a platform that can do any type of store, and also provide a click and collect option. What's important to know is that, like, the two legs on which CoopCycle was built was you need to be a co-op, because what Thiago was saying in terms of how useless it is to say how bad the working conditions are with the platform. You don't have a say in how the business is run. They decide for you. If you want in, you're in. But if you're not happy, they will tell you that you might as well do something else. And this is the reason why we said, being a CoopCycle member, you have to be a cooperative. It means that we want the power, like decisions, to be made by the couriers themselves, so that they decide what type of business they want to do, how they want to do it, and face the same dilemma as every cooperative, which means, you know, we want the best working conditions, but we have to face with this economic reality that the business we're making enables us to do. So this is the first thing. And the second thing was employment. In France, at least, it was kind of a big thing, because the gig economy platforms, they use the self-employed status, and in most countries they do. And because courier is kind of it's a really dangerous job. You know, you run fast like you cycle fast in the streets. You might have accidents. And there's no social security at all attached to the self-employed status. In France, at least, it's not always the same. Like, for example, in Germany, it's kind of different, but in France it was bad. So, like, the second conditions to be part of CoopCycle was you need to commit to employing people. And soon we realized that it was hard to commit from day one, from scratch, because when you start the business, if you don't have venture capitalist funds behind you, you can't really pay yourself hours in which you're not making money, because you're spending money you don't have, and your bank is soon going to tell you, well, what are you guys doing? So what we're trying to do is we set a path on which people commit. They sign an agreement with us, and they commit on meeting these two criteria. Also, because we know in some countries building up a cooperative might take some time, and so on and so on. So because we don't want to waste couriers' time, we accept to start with them in a different scheme, but we try to help them go towards those meeting those two criteria. What's important to know as well is what we learned from our own experience is that I was told by my fellow co-op members, like from the co-op movement, that it was impossible to compete with the gig economy platforms in the food delivery. And because I'm kind of stubborn, I wanted to try, because I didn't want to go into last mile delivery just to avoid competing with the big guys. So we tried it, and now we know that it works. Because what I didn't say is that I'm CoopCycle's coordinator, but before that I was a member of Cyclo, which is a food delivery co-op in Grenoble. And obviously the pandemic has helped us, like it's helped the business of a lot of delivery companies. But from the end of 2019 to today, we went from 0 to 18 employees now, and we're basically putting the brakes on any development, because we're not trying to find any more business. We're just trying to tackle the growth without making too many mistakes. So what we realized is it's possible for it to be making money while still being cheaper than the big guys. Because what we realized as well is that restaurants complain a lot about how much they're charged by Deliveroo or Uber Eats and so on. So we try to find maneuvers and way-arounds so that it could be a win-win deal for everybody. And we now know that you don't have to charge 30% tax-free to restaurants to be making a profitable co-op. So I guess that's an important thing. I don't know, maybe I could tell you a lot more about it. What CoopCycle is doing, basically, in a few words, is when Mex was developing the platform along with other volunteer developers, people said, well, okay, the technology is important, but it might be necessary, the platform, but it's not enough. And in order to make a successful delivery co-op, you need a lot of other things, because from one day to the other, you're going to be going from courier receiving an order to fulfill on a phone to courier cooperative, which means that you have to make everything happen before you get the order coming on your phone. So that means you're going to be as well, like you're going to be your salesman, you're going to be secretary, you're going to be accountant, you're going to be team manager, you're going to be everything. And so that means basically you're going to be a collective entrepreneur in a co-op, and therefore you don't decide and go from being just a courier answering calls to fulfill tasks to becoming an entrepreneur, and therefore what we want to do is trying to rely as much as possible on instances. In France, for example, we work a lot with the co-op federation so that they can train the riders into how do you run a co-op and so on and so on. And what CoopCycle is trying to do is to provide services in which we can help on the business model. We can help because we get discounts on equipment and so on. We want in the long term to be a commercial sales provider as a federation, because for example, right now in France, we're a national contact. People contact CoopCycle and say, I'm looking for a delivery partner in every city of France. How can you help me? And because we got the technology, we can tell to everybody, yeah, we can, we can host, like we can have your whatever you sell in every storage we have in France, and we connect APIs, and then it provides business to the local co-ops directly from the federation. So what we are is not a service provider, we're a federation, and we apply the same rule as we want the co-ops to apply for themselves, which means that the federation is run with one co-op having one vote to decide how the federation is going to be run. I could say many more things, but maybe if I have a couple more minutes, I can show you the platform. So the platform is both a software and an app. And anybody who wants to try it, anybody can go on demo.coopcycle.org and connect with the logins that are admin and admin, both for login and password. Sorry, it's in French. So this is the demo you get in, and it basically works the same as any other platform. Like what we do is when a co-op joins, we provide the platform as is, empty, but the way it works with like for everybody. This is like the running one that we have in Grenoble. So this is basically the entry point of every co-op, which is the map in which all the tasks come in. And this is unassigned tasks and assigned tasks, in which you have the couriers. So here you have all the couriers, and here you have all the tasks that we have to be dispatched to the couriers. The restaurants or the shops is just one way of getting tasks to come here. And basically, what we try to do is have multiple ways so that you can offer clients a certain number of ways for them to send you tasks. Why is that? It's also because some people need an e-commerce instance like this. Like this is the platform of Cyclo in Grenoble. So it works basically the same as any other platform. You click on it and then you choose whatever you need to be delivered, and so on and so on. But it's not the only way you can get deliveries, because some customers you have might need deliveries without having the need for you to sell for them on the platform their products. They might have their own means of selling, and they just need to send you the information that you need to be doing a delivery for them, and therefore you can. I'm sorry, this is in French. I should have changed, but you can create stores in which for example, if I choose one on the demo, which is called Magasin de Fou, so it's basically a backend in which you can, as a store, I can send you a delivery here, saying, yeah, 10 Rue de Rivoli, for example. And then I say here, so it gives me the price, all right? But if I tell you, yeah, it's 55 kilograms, you're gonna say 23 euros. And this is all because we've set up a pricing rule, and the point of the platform is that any co-op can create its own pricing rule based on distance, based on weight, based on volume, based on the emergency. And all of this is set up for every local co-op. It's not decided by CoopCycle in the platform. And here it is, like the dashboard for the store owner, seeing the past deliveries he's got, the upcoming ones, or today ones. So this is one, and here I've got the list of orders which I have. Here's data that you have for how much money you made on the platform every day. And this is the dashboard in which basically the couriers get their deliveries. And this is an auto refresh page, which means you don't have to refresh, it comes up directly. And whenever there's one that comes up, you can wait for the restaurant to accept it, for it to go from new order to accepted order. Or if you see that the restaurant is taking a lot of time to do it, then you call them and say, hey, there's a new order that came in, it hasn't been accepted yet, did you see it, and so on and so on. Once it's accepted, it comes back into the administration panel, and you can dispatch it to any couriers. Another way you can deal with things is importing a CSV. For example, if you've got a customer who has multiple points every day, or like one day, he can upload a CSV with all the directions and addresses, and then they will appear on the map. And once you do here, like you have this lightning bolt in which when you click on it, it organizes the work automatically in terms of what's the best route to go from one point to all of them others. So you don't have to have the tasks put in the right order. The platform can do it for you. That's it. This is also to create recurring tasks. Like, for example, if every Monday you have one pickup and 2 drop-offs, you can select the addresses, the time in which you have to do it, name and telephone number from every client, and so on, and register it. So you don't have to create them all every time you need to be doing them. You can just say, yeah, it happens every Monday. Last way we can do things is getting deliveries from plugins, because some customers work with WooCommerce or PrestaShop, e-commerce websites, technology. We have plugins so that we automate the incoming of the delivery from their platform to us. And last but not least, because we use it a lot, is the connection of APIs, because whenever you have a big client who sends you a lot of deliveries, they might be just saying at some point, this is becoming annoying doing this manually. Can we connect APIs so that all the deliveries come directly to your platform? And whenever the volume is worth it, we do it for the co-ops. And I've done it really fast, but this is basically...
That's a good general overview. And it just to confirm, it is fully localized, so everything's available in English and probably a few other languages as well.
If you go on the demo, just because I logged in as with my account, but in the demo you can, because it's already used. This is all the languages available. This was already used in other countries than France, and people have translated the platform themselves.
That's great, and it's in Portuguese as well, which is probably useful for a lot of the couriers here in Dublin. Yeah, no, that's great. You've actually, funny enough, you've actually answered the main questions from a Dublin Food Co-op perspective, which is, how easy is it to integrate this platform into the way we do things? And it seems like you've got all the options: manual, CSV, WooCommerce, which we use, So, you know, in principle, it doesn't seem like there's that many barriers to us being able to be a partner for any future co-op. It might be a good time to open up the floor, and like you can throw your questions in the chat if you feel a bit shy to ask the question, and you can also put your hand up. I think on most computers it's kind of down the bottom, reaction, and then raise hand. Tiago, I'd be curious to get your take on all this as kind of one of the presenters.
Clear something that the couriers will do the work as well to deal with the clients, to have like the restaurants on the platform and all this, or we're gonna have someone from the co-op, like a salesperson to do this job. Because something that is happened is exactly the language that he just mentioned, that many of the couriers just arrive and they don't, in the country, they don't really have good English to have this conversation with the clients. Then how this works exactly?
It's fully localized. It means you have to find people who are eager to do that kind of job. In most co-ops, people do, you know, it's things that you do before you start delivering. So at first, there's a few ways you can start something. You either start by just basically giving time to the project because you believe in it, and you're going to be spending time with restaurants in order to onboard them, help them build their platform, and so on. What we did in Grenoble is we found public money, grant money, so that we supported this job like without doing it for free. But obviously, someone who doesn't speak the language properly, he might not be the best person to start this project with. You know, he might be a good courier to onboard with you because you're going to be needing people in the project to do deliveries at some point. But the development part, it might be a good idea for, like, for example, in our co-op, we had a Slovak and a Polish members, and we try to give them whatever wasn't needed in French. For example, the graphics part of the co-op, doing some logos and things like that. It was done by a comrade from Slovakia.
That's great. You've just kind of raised a question there around like support and early stage supports for courier co-ops. Like, would you be able to talk a little bit about, you know, like you gave the example of your particular co-op, but like what organizations, or like we've got a few trade unionists on here today. Has there been any trade union support of any of these courier co-ops, or local authorities, municipalities, things like that?
Trade unions, it's been a complicated relationship with us, because in France, at least, there's a history, like it comes back to the 19th century, in which you know, the Marxists, they divided from the cooperativists, because, you know, people who wanted to run their own business were seen as people who would eventually end up as their people doing their thing on their side, not taking into account the rest of the population. But things are moving. And we currently have support from the biggest trade union organization, which is the CGT in France, and they're actually getting really interested in what we do, and they're paying some studies at the moment for us to be building a launching kit for the local cooperative in France. Because they believe it's a way for the exploited couriers to find different working conditions. So basically, we're working with them a bit more than what we used to do. It's also because we used to be very small, and, you know, people looked at us from distance, and now we're getting bigger. We have more and more members in France, and members who are becoming themselves bigger. So I guess we're becoming an alternative. What I would really like is to have trade unions, but not only local councils, support organization, and so on, together, because what's one of the problem in setting up a successful courier co-op is the advertisement. Of course, we're not Uber, we're not Deliveroo, so we can't sponsor a national rugby league, or we can't put our logo on every sportsman's jersey. And what we realized is we need a lot of people telling themselves that something happens for the energy to spread and to be successful. What we realized as well is we started building CoopCycle as something for couriers, and now it's switching from something made for couriers to something that is turned towards local economy. The couriers themselves, certainly, but also the restaurants, but also the local council, because whenever you have money taken to Uber and Deliveroo, it's money that goes away from the territory. Whereas if you're a co-op in Dublin, paying your taxes in Ireland and so on and so on, the money the money you make, everything's for the territory. Plus, what we do is 100% push bike or electric bikes, but no motorbikes. And in these days in which global warming and pollution are important matters, a lot of public authorities can find what we do important as well. So what we managed to do in some countries and in some cities as well in France is we gather more people around the table than just the couriers, and we discuss collectively about how can we make this a profitable initiative for everybody.
Yeah, well, it definitely seems like in Ireland that's the approach that would need to be taken, because I think at the moment there's a lot of different angles to the whole courier space, and I think there's a lot of different people who want to support potentially. I know some trade union activists and local authorities, but also migrant rights organizations as well. Like, some people might be aware of the Great Care Co-op, which is a social care co-op, workers co-op, that was set up in the last couple of years with the support of the Migrant Rights Centre of Ireland. So I do know that this is potentially the kind of thing that migrant rights organizations could support as well. There's been no questions from the floor.
This has got a question.
We'll jump to Shane then. Shane, go ahead, just unmute yourself.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, work away, Shane, welcome.
Yeah, how's it going? So I suppose I'm just wondering, you're talking about starting up there and stuff. Obviously the most difficult aspect would be to initially bring companies and clients on board to be able to actually have the work there and stuff, because in Dublin at the moment, like, you've got say 7 main courier companies, you've got maybe 3 main food delivery companies, you know what I mean? So like, the market's very well established, so they already have their client base, you know what I mean? And for us to come in then and to start a co-op, you know what I mean? Like, yes, there's a lot of new independent companies and stuff that we might be able to bring on board, and that'll be more kind of interested in this kind of delivery service, keeping it eco, keeping it green, kind of not for profit, all that. But at the same time, are we going to have enough of that to be able to put food on the table? You know what I mean? How do we get this ball rolling? How do we start this initiative? Like, you know what I mean? This would be my question.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. What we did in Grenoble is we basically kept working for the gig economy platforms while we were setting up our own. Yeah. Because for a couple of months, it was very poor. The level of business that we managed to realize was actually not good, and therefore what we needed to make sure we had couriers on the street at every lunch and dinner, so that whenever there was an order coming for our co-op, we could ditch any
order that was coming. You'd always have somebody that would be free to kind of cover the order
and so on. So this is actually the how do you do both, and how do you keep money and food on your table? But that doesn't answer the how do you get more customers on your platform. And we also did another mistake by thinking that the customers we would bring to our platforms would be our customers.
Yeah.
And in reality, some of them are, because, you know, especially people from the trade unions and so on, they would never, like in France, they would not, most of them would not order from the gig economy platforms, knowing how bad the working conditions are and so on.
Yeah.
So some of the customers are ours, but, you know, it takes a lot of energy to bring them on, because
I'm sure it does.
Because it's a lot of, and it's a job. I mean, you know, I'm not in communication and so on, so this is something I wasn't good at. But what we realized is that at some point that the orders and the deliveries were created by the restaurants themselves.
Okay.
Because what they do is they bring or they don't bring their customers on your platform if they believe in it. And what we found is that we looked for rather famous, what we know now is famous restaurants bring customers. Famous and partner restaurants are really getting a lot of orders on your platform, and vegan restaurants do it a lot as well, because I guess that when you're vegan, you don't have options on the streets next to where you are to eat every time and so on. But this is, imagine that you could be putting all the efforts you can to bring more clients.
Yeah.
Or you can,
then I suppose, but what's going to attract these vegan restaurants and stuff to you, as opposed to going with somebody like Deliveroo or Uber Eats? What's going to be their initiative to sign with you and to use your platform as their delivery service, though? That's what I'm asking.
One main thing is obviously the price, because what, I don't know how it works in Ireland, but in France they usually charge 30% of the cart to the restaurant, which is a lot. And as I said in introduction, we realized that it's possible to be profitable while being cheaper. So this is one thing. And the other thing, and I guess it's almost as important, if not more important, is that you provide a local service, human service. Whenever there's a problem, you phone them, you call them and say, okay, how can we make things better? Instead of having just a decision coming from a computer saying, you know, this client said you fucked up an order. So we
have a more of a personal relationship with the client.
So we took 10 euros out of your money to reimburse them and so on and so on. And also because the working conditions are so bad, a lot of restaurants are also very unhappy about the delivery service, you know, because the couriers, a lot of people do that because they don't have any choice. So whenever they come, they don't say hi, they don't smile, they say, okay, give me the food, I'll be gone. And what you guys are going to be doing is, you know, you like this job, this is why you're here, I guess. So what you're going to be doing is something different, you know, because they're your partners, so you're going to be taking care of them the way you expect them to take care of you as well. You take care of your customers, you do everything by bike, and, you know, you give a phone call and so on and so on. And this is this is what I realized was the most important for most restaurants.
Thanks, guys. I work for the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, so I'm really interested in this. Like, we're not an organising union, we're the national body. And I know one of my colleagues has just dropped out of the call. Teresa she represents SIP2. And I think it's a great conversation, because we know there are difficulties, and we know, like, the awful exploitative conditions that, you know, couriers have. And it's just, I know the unions have had some difficulties trying to even organize people, or even trying to find people and engage with them and all the rest. The co-op is a really good idea. I suppose our interest would be the touch points in terms of, you know, if you're working for a co-op, like, how does that work? And, you know, how could we help? I do think, and I know you're really describing a new model, you know, to try and compete with the gig economy. And I think if it was successful, like it seems to be in France, if it's successful, it could be used for lots of other things around the gig economy, because it's a really new way of exploiting people. And I suppose if we fix this, there'll be something else comes down in about 10 or 15 years time. That's what always happens. People skirt any sort of improvements. But from our point of view, I think there's lots of scope for us to get involved, to have more conversations and see how we can support the idea of the cooperatives, how we can support the couriers a bit more. Because I know you're in development and you've come a long way in France, and I think we could learn a lot. But there's also ways in which the unions could support. I mean, you know, we have 800,000 members across the country, and if all of those were trying to support, you know, that kind of cooperative and that kind of collective, because it is something that we are interested in. We've spoken to Sam before about other options and other things. So look, I can't, you know, say the unions are going to do X, Y, and Z, okay, because I don't work for the affiliates, and we don't have the big decision makers here on this. But I think there's a couple of things I can do. I facilitate, like you're saying, Sam, you know, local authorities, communities, like I facilitate our networks across the country. So we have about 16 or 17 groups in different counties around the country. And I think if we were to even try and have this webinars with a number of your partners and other supportive groups to see how we could try and get some support in terms of either sponsorship or engagement or advertising cost membership, stuff like that, you know. But I do think there's definitely a room for more conversations, and hopefully that, you know, is something that we can do to support that kind of movement, because ultimately workers having better conditions and not being exploited, and the whole health and safety, and I know there's issues around violence now, you know, going into, you know, when they're out and about with deliveries. So like there's huge problems, and it's just trying to find the best way to reach people, which has been our problem. So we'd be really interested. I have nothing to add in terms of, you know, how to develop it, but I certainly do think that we would be really interested in having more conversations, not just talking, but conversations about how we could, you know, practically support what you're trying to do, and how it would work with the unions as well. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona.
Again, just to just say a little thing about what you just said, the union culture on which from which I'm talking about is the French one. So obviously this history is probably different from the Anglo-Saxon world. And when you were talking, I remember that, for example, 2 of our members in Canada, among which Shift Delivery Co-op, which is a big co-op, workaround co-op in Vancouver, they were actually sponsored and financed by worker unions in Canada. So I guess there's multiple ways. Maybe just, you know, at some point, maybe just advertising a different service is helping a lot. So if you are okay to keep this conversation open, I think it's really interesting.
Should we jump to another in-person question we have them?
We have the question from Anne, which is a quick one for Adrien, and Anne asks, I have a question on how does a co-op compare in terms of end customers are charged. So what is the average cost to people? Is there a big difference between Deliveroo and the co-op? I'm guessing that's about the end customer, right? The person who's receiving delivery
as well. It's very variable depending on any of the co-ops. What you have to understand is the money the customer pays is a little bit of what the co-op or Deliveroo makes. Usually the business model is really based on how much the restaurant takes on the price of a delivery and how big the zone is, you know, because it's always an element of comparison between how much you make and how long does it take to do. So basically in Grenoble, we're a little bit more expensive than Deliveroo, but it's not like we charge triple the amount we charge is charged from Deliveroo. We charge 3.5 euros for any delivery, whatever the zone they're getting delivered at. And any co-op can decide whatever they want. Just a few words about this. A few co-ops have tried to say that customers should pay the right amount for the delivery. Let's say, because, for example, in France, what we aim is to make 9.5 euros per delivery tax before tax. And some people say, well, you know, the restaurant should not have to pay anything on this. And it's never been successful, because I think this is trying to fight against things that have been working differently for a while now. You can get a TV from China for 10 euros. So why would you pay 10 euros for your meal to be delivered 1.5K away? You know, you might as well think it's a bad thing. But if you want your co-op to be successful, I would advise against doing something like that, because it's counterintuitive and counterproductive for the customers. They will say, you will get the people who are very convinced about what you're doing, but this is a business in which you need volume. You need a lot of people ordering, so you can't really have just the people who really like your project ordering. You need more people.
Very good.
Okay, so Rona, Rona McCord has her hand up there.
Hiya, can you hear me, Sam? Rona from
yeah.
Unite Trade Union. I just wanted to follow up on something that Fiona was saying there, because there's a significant problem in this sector in terms of the status of a lot of the delivery drivers, cyclists, workers in the country, in that they're migrant labour. And in the case of Brazilian workers, they've been forced and trapped, if you like, into the black market and the black economy. And there's a real danger, I mean, that because of that status, that they will get trapped there even further if it's a case that you have a very good cooperative, you know, and the potential is there for something like that. But because of their status and fear of being discovered or working an extra hour or so on, which affects their visa and their status in the country, that they may have to stay outside of something like this, because you would have to be official and transparent and above board. So there's a real problem here, that even if something like this could be of fantastic benefit to other workers, but anybody who's you know, trapped in that black market may become even more trapped and left even more isolated in there. So I think in terms of what the trade union movement can do and should be doing is possibly a lobbying piece to government around the legislation that leaves people there. Now, obviously it suits employers to have layers of people in society who can be super exploited, because it creates the race to the bottom and drives the prices downwards or the wages downwards. So it suits a lot of the, you know, the multinationals to have people like this all across society. But to break it, you know, a co-op potentially could break it, but we'd be very careful that layers of people don't get left behind because of their status. So I think, you know, that's probably something, I mean, it's a political issue, it's a legislation issue, but it has gone on and on and on to the point where there's you know, these particular set of workers are just victims of racism and abuse and all, as well as low pay and exploitation, and are pretty much trapped. So I think we should be really cognizant of that going forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Rona. I'm just looking. There's another question there from Connor Cahill, and Connor asks, how much do restaurants have a say in the direction of development of the platform? Can they be brought in as co-creators to ensure the continuing success of the project and the co-ops? So, yeah.
First, I would like to address the previous question, or like the previous observation. As much as we're trying to do something better, we're not naive, and we know that we're not going to replace the gig economy exploiter from one day to the next. But we think and we believe that what we do is proof with an example that it can work differently. And of course, it has to be done with political lobbying, political, you know, pushing about these platforms needing to be working differently. We have the exact same issue in France. People are not usually from Brazil, more like from Africa. And what CoopCycle is doing is a lot of communication on how bad the platform works. But also we've been included in projects in Paris in which we're going to be running a house of couriers in Paris, in the streets of Paris, which is not for the cooperatives. It's really for the like any other courier, and it's a safe place for them to wait in the rain, or they can take shower, and they can lie on the sofa for like when in between orders, and in which we're going to be hosting some people who can help them on their legal advice for like migrant conditions. Maybe there will be also food delivery, and there will be obviously trade unions if people want to attack the platforms on their status. So obviously what we're trying to do is not do things on our own, but really think about how we can see the bigger picture in all this. About Connor's question, everything's possible. Restaurants can have a say. There's this legal status in France, I guess it exists in Ireland as well, which is a multi-stakeholder cooperative. And this gives you the possibility of having multiple stakeholders being in the cooperative. One of them could be the restaurants, another could be the couriers. From our experience, restaurant owners, they need deliveries at the moment, but as soon as they're going to be open and being able to welcome in-house customers, delivery is going to become again something on the side, the cherry on the cake. And for those people, managing to have commitment from people who have a little interest in the project is kind of hard. And what we realized is most co-ops who wanted to try as multi-stakeholder, in the end, they really become a courier-owned cooperative because they're the ones who work in this full-time and really need this to make a living. But as long as we have couriers who have the majority of votes, you guys can decide whatever you want in terms of who can get in as well. And I would find interesting to manage in a system in which restaurants are stakeholders and local councils are stakeholders, and even customers might be stakeholders, and so on and so on. There's no pattern in which we say this is the way it should work. The only thing we want is the couriers to have control. So we would only accept a certain percentage of votes from other stakeholders.
I think what I'm hearing and what I like to hear from CoopCycle and other kind of platforms like yourselves is that you kind of really do leave it to the locality to kind of tailor things to the particular locality, because each city is different. The kind of stakeholders that you might need to get something off the ground are going to be different. As you say, in a city in Canada, you needed the trade unions to get it off the ground. In France, you needed support from local authorities, but maybe not the other way around. So it's good to know that you're kind of, as long as the kind of key principles are satisfied, there's there's a lot of flexibility there.
And more than flexibility, we're eager for people to take over training and onboarding the co-ops, because we've been able to do what we've been able to do in France because we are French and we know the French environment very well. But when people call me from Mexico and ask me how to do things, like, I can help you in terms of how food delivery works, but in terms of how to build a co-op, who to get money from, and so on, I'm useless. So if local people can take this part on their side, it's best.
That's great. I'm just like, does anybody else have any kind of burning questions or comments? Because we're coming up on the hour. And Tiago, I hate to go back to you again, but do you have any kind of parting kind of questions or comments before we log off?
For understand a little bit better about the co-ops and the couriers, every courier who joined the co-op will have a vote, and or you could just keep like a position of leaders in the co-op and just couriers who got and join the platform just to do the job, and because you're going to find people that are actually not interesting to have the hands-on and do it, but probably is interesting to do the delivery for you and just make their money. How that works?
We're having a lot of fights about it. No, but it's a very political question among the co-op world. It's called the relation of exclusivity in the co-op. Should you do business only with your members? Like for the Dublin Food Co-op, for example, I guess it means that you can't just be a customer, go in and do your grocery.
No, you can. We're open to everyone.
Oh, you're open to everyone. In France, it's not open. In the CoopCycle, it's still something we need to decide. At the moment, we're not restraining this. We just say you need to be a co-op. So that means you can be a co-op of 3 people. And in the end, you could employ maybe 30 people who are not members of the co-op, and that would be fine. It would not be fine if you ask me, but it's in the rules, in the current rules, it would be fine. So there's no problem about it, but it's an ongoing discussion about what the ground rules should be within the federation to be political, for our political principles to be met the best way.
Yeah, well, in the English-speaking world, in worker co-ops, it tends to be as long as it's open and anybody can join, and there's kind of an active encouragement to join, that sometimes, non-members are allowed to work for the co-op. But it's not considered ideal, I don't think, to say the least. But just conscious of the time, like we'll probably wrap up now, and I just wanted to give you, Adrien, maybe a chance to a call to action. Like, what's the best way to move the conversation forward, do you think?
So I was expecting maybe more couriers. So I was just going to say, if you guys are interested, you can write to contact@coopcycle.org. But considering the fact that we have different stakeholders here as well, maybe we could just send an email afterwards to all the participants. And if you return an email saying you're interested, then we can set up another meeting, just focusing more on how to get things done.
Okay, everyone. Well, look, thanks a million for coming and for staying to the end. And big thank you to Adrien for speaking today and sharing so much. And I suppose to Tiago as well for bringing the kind of the courier experience to the beginning of the meeting. And yeah, I'll send out an email today, I guess, inviting people to connect.
Thank you.
And yeah, and thanks for everybody who asked great questions. It really got the conversation to where I think it needed to go today. So all the best, everyone. Keep well. Have a good day.